a home where the buffalo roam, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day.
When we grew up on those little ranches, all of us kids, even as very young kids, became important members of those hay crews. And it wasn't Dad's ranch out there. It was always our ranch. They were our cattle. We were all a part of those operations. And back in the early 60s when I first started doing things, they had all these tiny little tractors, little two-cylinder John Deeres and small Internationals, and they put mowers and dump rakes on those, and those kids were out there at tender ages putting up that hay. And we were all felt proud of our jobs in the hayfield. And if there was a 10-year-old kid and you hadn't had a job yet in the hayfield, you kind of felt ashamed of yourself. Really, and it was a proud thing for us. And if they couldn't find any other job for you, they'd give you a pitchfork and put you up in that haystack. All that stack was, most of the stacks were stacked with F10 farmhands at that time, loaders that fit on the front of those little tractors, and they'd lift that hay up and had push-offs on them that shove that hay off so you could really make those stacks high. You know, I think that work was our entertainment to a large extent, and it remains so this day. We're a long ways from big-time entertainment centers. Have to go to Minneapolis, perhaps Winnipeg or Denver. So, as rural people, we've made our own entertainment most of the time. And some of the best fun we ever have is sitting around the table with friends and neighbors, talking about some of the things we've done as work, and many things that probably weren't so fun at the time they happened, and weren't always so fun for all parties involved. I remember making hay with my dad. We put it up loose in stacks. Dad had one of those stack frames, and he'd fill that to the max. Then sometimes, but not often, he'd say, "Rodney, you have the knack. Grab a fork, I'll lift you up, and you top off the stack." It was reluctantly I'd take that fork. He'd lift me up on top. Seemed like I'd stack that hay to 30 feet before he'd finally stop. And then he'd drive up really close. I could see him down beneath as I stepped out on the push-off on the end of those stacker teeth. He'd back up for a little ways. I hoped he'd try no tricks. But giving me rides on that farmhand was how he got his kicks. Wasn't long till I'd get mad. I'd had these rides before. He'd slide that push-off almost in, then he'd run her out once more. "Come on, Dad, let me down. This really isn't fair." Then he'd point the teeth towards the ground, leave me dangling in the air. I could hear him laughing down below in hopeless, choking mirth, and I'd wonder if I'd ever again set my feet upon the earth. Well, it was no use to argue. He wouldn't quit till he was done, but I always wondered, how could this be so fun? Well, our yard light burned out last year. Since I'd run that farmhand all my life, I knew we could fix it in a minute if I could convince my wife. Wasn't easy to convince her. She claimed a housewife was her role. Though mad she was, she climbed aboard, took a ride to the top of the pole. I said, "Sweetheart, I'm so proud of you when she fixed that light, and you're especially lovely when you're angry. You really are a sight." "Let me down, you worthless cur." She was having a full-fledged fit. Well, I couldn't pass up a chance like this, so I drove around a bit. Good, clean fun. I thought to myself as she called me a hopeless sap. My grin got even wider as I made another lap. "Honey, just enjoy yourself, and isn't it a fright? It's the first time that I've carried you since our wedding night." Well, I finally shut that tractor off, let her sit up there a while, promised her I'd let her down if she would only smile. By gosh, it was fun, but I have a problem. I can see it now, I can. Gonna take some mighty sweet talking when that light burns out again.